Hi everyone, welcome back. This is the next video in my goal setting series. If you are just jumping in at this video and want to watch everything that I've put out so far, I will link the playlist in the card above and also in the description box below. Today's topic is about goals, habits or systems, and projects. I spent some time thinking about how best to define and differentiate these three. And I think the best way to start is to talk about how they're related and kind of what the difference is, at least by my definition. So let's start with goals. To me, a goal is an expression of a destination or an ideal. I think there's actually two types of goals. There's the specific goal and there's an iterative goal. Sometimes your goals are very specific. To go back to a previous example I've used in an earlier video, to run a marathon by the end of this year. Other times, it's a more abstract representation of your destination. So to use one of my own goals, to create a home that fosters rest and connection. Generally, you'll find the first type, the specific goals, are more of a mid-length term, about a year. And the second type of goal, the iterative goals, are usually more than 1 year, so maybe 2 to 5 years in length. I think specific goals are what most people think of when they hear the word goal or SMART goals. So as I mentioned before, the second type of goal is an iterative goal. It tends to be longer term, generally like 2 to 5 years or more, and is more iterative. Obviously, I called it an iterative goal. So what I mean by this is that the first year you work on the goal, it will look like a thing to you. The next year, it will look like something similar, but a little bit different. Because the following year, you'll be building on the work you did in the first year and moving again towards the destination that you want to get to. So in essence, you'll have one type of projects to support the goal the first year, and you'll have another type of projects to support the goal the second year. So maybe in my example about creating a home that fosters rest and connection, the first year would be about decluttering and minimizing my belongings so that my house is less work to maintain. Then in the second year, it might be about completing home projects. The third year, maybe it's about redefining my home decor so it feels more like home to me and is more comfortable for my family and my guests. That's what I mean by iterative. There's not really an end, but there's a new iteration of what it looks like each time that you work on it. I think the biggest challenge of an iterative goal is defining what it looks like to you that first year. Once you have like a year under your belt, you start to know kind of what the next year, what the next level, the next iteration is, what you want that to look like. So in a previous video, Lisa Marie gave an example of wanting to learn the trombone in the comments. So using her example, you could create a specific goal. Maybe it's learn to play a certain piece of music in a certain time frame or achieve a certain level of competency, whether it's intermediate level, concert level, whatever. Obviously, you'd need to determine how you would know you'd reach that competency. Perhaps you have a selection of music that is at that level and you want to be able to learn how to play it in a certain time frame, or maybe you participate in a competition and that lets you know you've moved up, or maybe you have an instructor who tells you, yes, you're at this level now. So you could also, though, create an iterative goal with this. Learn to play the trombone. So you know this is going to take more than just a single year, unless you're Prodigy, but that's an outlier, we won't talk about that. So you figure out what it looks like the first year, and then you base your supporting habits and projects around what you want to be by the end of the first year. The next year you review and determine what your next step is, and then so on and so forth. So when you're breaking your goals down, I find, as I've mentioned a couple of times already, they're best supported by habits, projects, or maybe both. So this is where we're going to get into the difference between all of them. Let's start with habits. A lot of people seem to use the terms habits and systems interchangeably, but I believe there's actually a subtle difference. To me, a system is a web of parts that together has a greater impact than each of its pieces on its own. So a habit, to me, would be one of those individual parts. Honestly, there's so much out there on the topic of habits. I'm not going to get like way down in the weeds on what that is. I recommend you read The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg if you want to learn more about how to make and break habits. But in essence, habits are actions that are repeated, usually with the goal of putting them on autopilot so that you receive the reward of doing the thing, but not having to expend the effort of doing it as a one-off action each time. Generally, you'll want to tie habits together so that you create a routine. So a routine is a chain of actions that you tie together, done often with a trigger, actually done always with a trigger, where one action just leads into the next without a lot of thought or energy put into it. At least that's how it works when a routine's been established. If you've ever tried establishing a routine, you know it's kind of painful for the first few iterations until you sort of get a rhythm as to how it's going to work. Of course, routines can be positive, like setting up a chain of habits first thing in the morning. For example, get up, make your bed, take a shower, brush your teeth. They can also be negative though, such as getting into the habit, usually unwittingly, of coming home from work, grabbing whatever not so healthy food happens to be sitting out within reach, flopping on the couch and munching mindlessly for several hours while you watch TV or scroll through social media. So in the book, Charles points out that we can change our life by changing our habits, which, I mean, looking at the examples I just gave you, it seems to be definitely true. Compare the system I've established of coming home and munching mindlessly with a system that looks more like come home from work, change into workout clothes and either work out or go for a walk or a run, eat a healthy meal, clean up the kitchen, and then sit down with a book and read. Which of these do you think is better going to support a healthy lifestyle? I mean, I'm not going to say you can't watch TV, but when it's tied with other habits like munching mindlessly, then that's when you have to be careful. I also want to mention that habits that aren't in the same routine can actually support each other. If you're in the habit of doing minimal food preparation on Sunday night, let's say, then you'll be able to benefit later in the week because you won't have to cook when you're tired and low in energy on time. So you're more likely to keep up the healthier version of your weeknight routine when you don't have to cook a meal from scratch. I think the key is to create routines that make a routine that you do on a different day easier. So it's this intertwined web of routines, that's your system. It's the synergy of all the habits and all your routines that improve your life and help you accomplish your goals. If you leave out one routine or don't try and tie them together, you might still get where you're wanting to go goal-wise, but it may not be quite as fast. Sorry. Emma is playing with who knows what over on the floor. All right, going back to Lisa Marie's example of playing the trombone, the system that you use to support the goal of learning to play the trombone might look like, and I'm going to confess here, I did some very brief internet research, so this may or may not be accurate. All right. So daily, practicing correct breathing and posture while playing scales, doing position drills, and practicing lip slurs. And then on specific days, you might practice that week or that month's music. So the practice that you do on the daily basis is hopefully instilling good habits that make the mechanical part of learning to play the trombone muscle memory. That way, when you're practicing the music, you're more able to focus on reading the music and playing it expressively. So you're spending less mental energy and focus on the physical part of playing the instrument. That's kind of the goal in having, especially things like playing instruments and stuff, a habit. So I always translate this, of course, into dance, which is my language. You spend a lot of time learning about the basic steps and how they fit in with the counts of the music. You ingrain those steps into muscle memory so that your body instinctively knows what step comes next. Then, as you improve, you can insert other movements into those basic steps and have the dance be more about interpreting the music than about the basic steps and the beat count. So in both instances, your goal is the transition of individual skills to a work of art, and it's all done via repetition. So that's habits. Let's shift away from habits and talk about projects. So habits tend to be a spiral way to reach a goal. Sometimes it's called a feedback loop. Basically, by repeating the same steps, you see improvement. Sometimes you can spiral downwards too, but we'll assume positive intent right now. And habits are usually individual in nature. Like, you don't do a habit necessarily with another person. You can, but normally that's not the case. On the other hand, projects are more linear in nature, and usually they can be something you can work on either by yourself or with another group of people. I plan to have a video in the future about applying project management theories towards achieving goals, but I just want to cover some basic ideas right now. So at their most basic level, projects are a group of related actions. So you'll generally find projects are shorter term, usually 1 month to 1 to 2 quarters. And as I mentioned before, they can sometimes involve input or collaboration with other people. Of course, the involvement of other people usually makes them a little more complex because not only are you tracking what you need to do, you're tracking things you're waiting for from other people. So that kind of adds to the complexity. Now, if you ask David Allen in his Getting Things Done methodology, a project is anything that involves more than one step. Now, you can take this super granular and kind of almost a little too far. But even he admits that sometimes simple projects don't need to be managed as you would a more complex project. So, for example, let's take going out to dinner with your spouse. Technically, that could be a project. I mean, well, for some of us it's a complex project too, if you think about how many back and forths you have to do about where are we eating, what sounds good, I don't know, what do you want? But even aside from that, you still have to choose a date and a time. If you're eating out, you need to choose a restaurant. Maybe you want to make reservations, so then you have to call the restaurant to make reservations. And then there's the getting in the car and the driving there. There's a whole bunch of steps that are in between the thought of, hey, let's go out to dinner at a really nice restaurant that we have to make a reservation for, and actually eating. However, for these simpler projects, we tend to take care of almost all of those steps at one time. So it doesn't make sense to break them down because you're just sitting down and doing it. Now, if you're having to pause in the middle of that, then it makes sense for you to actually write down a task of whatever the very next thing you need to do. I like to think of those as bookmarks. It kind of tells me where I've been, where I need to go, and that way if do not even remember what I was doing, I can just pick back up and carry on and get whatever it is finished. So I will be doing a video actually very soon on breaking down projects into tasks, and I'll go more into depth about how to break down complex projects in that video. All right, so as you go, you'll figure out which goals benefit from using habits and which ones benefit from using projects and which ones actually use a combination of both. A health goal might include creating a workout routine, habit, but it also might include a project of taking a class to learn how to cook healthy meals. That would be a project. So a finance goal might include a routine of tracking your finances and budget, but it also might have a project of setting up a will, setting up a trust, or setting up a retirement plan. And then once you've done that, you might have a habit of putting money into those things if it's some sort of an investment. So hopefully this video has clarified the differences between habits and projects and how they can be used to support your goals. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. Make sure you're subscribed and click the notification bell if you're interested in finding out when the next video is released. And I thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!